Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to my channel, Do Ministry Gaming. And today I want to talk a little bit about some basic strategies around how to extract more value out of your master missions. Now, in this video, I'm primarily going to talk about each one of these masters and how you can combo them with certain Atlas Ascendancies to get the maximum effectiveness out of them, or what, Atlas Ascendancies typically pair well with these masters. Before we get into it, there are a number of things I do want to say. The first is these are some typical strategies that I deploy myself, or the ones that I think might be good combinations. I'm certainly not covering everything that's out there because the combinations really are endless. And there's a lot of other creative ways to combo these together by a lot of other people who play the game and think about things different ways. And so this is by no means a be all end all strategy guide for min-maxing master missions. There's lots out there that I'm not familiar with and are very creative and work really well as well. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. The next couple points is that these strategies can change over time in two ways. First is within the league itself, of course, depending on what time of the league it is and how the market prices are reacting. Some of these strategies fall in and out of favor, or are really good sometimes and not so good at later times. And so just be aware that these strategies do change in terms of effectiveness over the course of a league, and also between leagues as well. This is a video for Path of Exile 3.14, but in 3.15, GGG may make changes to the master missions or the Atlas Ascendancies as they have already in 3.14. That might change the effectiveness or the combos of how some of these master missions and ascendancies work together. And so just be aware that, those changes might happen, and that this video is really more or less specific to the current league, which is 3.14. All right, so what I'll do is I'll just walk through each of the masters one at a time and go through the Atlas Ascendancies and the pairings that are good for each of them. So as usual, there'll be time codes in the description below if you want to jump to very specific masters. There's only a couple that you care about. And also, if you're not already familiar with master missions themselves and how they work within the Atlas or Atlas Ascendancies, this video is not going to cover that. I do have another video, which is Atlas Guide for Beginners, that I'll link in the description below. If you want to touch up on the basics, you can absolutely check that video out and get caught up to speed on how everything actually functions at a basic level before diving into this video, which is more of a strategy session once you are familiar with the basics. All right, so the first master I will talk about will be Zana. She's sort of more straightforward than the rest, and what I'll do is I guess I'll just go from bottom up. But for Zana, the really only Atlas Ascendancies to pair with Zana are the ones in Uncharted Realm, and they're highlighted in the bottom left arm here. There's 6 passives that you can pick. And the big ones, I'll go over one at a time. Master of the Atlas gives you increased Zana favor, as well as 5% chance to grant an additional Zana mission on completion. And then it's really the next two that really add the juice. So the first one is Paths Not Taken. What Paths Not Taken does is it basically increases the amount of maps that you see when you actually see a Zana. Okay, so it's two lines here. Zana gives additional maps that can appear in the map options, and then Zana have double the base number of map options. Now, something like this was very popular in 3.13 and still works decently in 3.14, although some changes have been made. But anyway, the strategy here is by taking Paths Not Taken, every time you see Zana, you're going to see a lot more map options, which means it increases the chance that you're going to see, special maps like Guardian maps or, synthesis maps. Although, disclaimer, in patch 3.14, the chance that you're going to see these unique maps has been lowered. But anyway, the point is taking Paths Not Taken will at least, from baseline, whatever baseline is in 3.14, it will at least increase the probability that you're going to see those special maps that usually have better rewards than, just the normal map, right? And then the other is something that was also very popular in 3.13, that again you can still do in 3.14 is to target farm certain mechanics. And one very popular one was harvest. So the more map options you have, the more chance that you're going to see a map that contains a harvest in it. So if you're specifically farming harvest, for example, then the more map options you have, the more likely you're going to see that, and you can just keep farming Zana until you get those harvest missions. Now, the other node here is Echoes of War. I don't actually recall if this was in 3.3 or if this was changed. But anyway, as with 3.14, what this does is basically the maps that you run from Zana now have up to 30 additional packs of Shaper and Elder monsters. So basically, drastically increases the monsters that you have within the maps that you are running through Zana. And of course, because they're Shaper and Elder, they can drop the influenced items. And so, if you were farming Shaper and Elder items, this potentially could be one way to increase the number of drops that you get from the Shaper and Elder. But even if not that, it drastically does increase the number of monsters that actually show up in the map, and that in itself has some value as well. All right, so one last thing I'll say about Zana is that typically with Zana as well, you want to use your Zana master missions on the highest tier maps that you can get. Typically, right? So if you're running a red Zana mission, typically I like to use them on tier 16 maps, which means it'll be able to give you the highest map rolls, all the Guardian maps, all the synthesis maps, and what have you. And also, because the map options that show up are higher tier maps as well, by running those maps, you're also going to get additional higher tier map drops and all the benefits of running a high tier map, right? And so, commonly, for myself anyway, if I find that I'm struggling to, let's say, sustain high map drops, maybe I've only got one tier 16 map and I really want to get some more, then what I typically would do actually is run a Zana mission on top of that one tier 16 map so that I have both the tier 16 map that I'm running to drop more tier 16 maps, as well as the Zana map to drop additional tier 16 maps. So that is also a very good way to use Zana, and that's how I do it. All right, so the next master I'll talk about is June, which is, of course, the Syndicate or the Betrayal League mechanic. And there are two Atlas regions that you want to run or combo with the June missions typically. And I'll start with the Valdo's Rest, which is something I've been doing a lot actually in the 3.1 league, 1.4 league, because Syndicate has been so good so far in terms of the rewards. And so there's really two main nodes in Valdo's Rest that you can pick up for the Syndicate. The first is defeat the Gut Instinct, defeating an Immortal Syndicate member. Let me see if you can see it. Defeating an Immortal Syndicate member in areas grant 5 intelligence for the current encounter safe house if not interrogated. I personally really like this one. I find it very useful because every Syndicate member that you defeat basically, regardless of what option you pick, is going to advance the intelligence of that safe house. And I oftentimes myself find that that is sort of the rate limiting step in terms of how fast you can reap the rewards of Syndicate. And so being able to progress that and not have to choose, to interrogate versus actually getting a decent reward or leveling up the Syndicate member is really nice. Now you can level up the Syndicate member and get some intelligence along the way as well at the same time. So I personally really like Gut Instinct. Now there's also this one here, which is a test of loyalty. And basically Syndicate members executed in areas have a 100% chance to gain an additional rank, which is also very nice. Basically, if you have a rank 1 Syndicate member and you execute it for the +1 level, you have a chance to gain an additional rank. So that's quite good as well. And so there's also this one here called Test of Loyalty in Valdo's Rest. It says here Syndicate members executed in areas have a 100% chance to gain an additional rank. So that is, of course, a very welcome, very nice as well. It basically assists you and helps you to get your Syndicate members ranked up as fast as you can. Now, there is another Atlas region that runs Syndicate. There's basically 3 notable passives. The first one is Focused Investigation, which is just giving you additional favor as well as a chance to get an additional June mission on completion. And then sort of the two key ones here. The first is Intelligence Gathering. Completing maps grants 10 intelligence for random immortal Syndicate safe house. And so just like in the Valdo's Rest, this node allows you to get intelligence without actually having to interrogate the members, which is just very nice quality of life because you don't have to pick between advancing a safe house versus choosing a reward on the Syndicate members. Now, this one obviously functions a little differently. This is every time you complete a map, it'll gain 10 intelligence for a random Syndicate safe house, which I find progresses the Syndicate slower than Valdo's Rest does, right? For Valdo's Rest, every Syndicate member that you interact with gets you 5, as long as you don't interrogate them. And so overall, you can get more from every map in Valdo's Rest than you can from Hayward Hamlet here. But this is still really quite nice to have. And then there's this option here in Hayward Hamlet, which is bribery. Immortal Syndicate members and heirs are 200% more likely to offer bargain. And then when you do bargain, they drop 200% more items. Basically, bigger loot explosion when you bargain with the Syndicate members, which of course drops both loot as well as increases the amount of veiled items that you get. Now, between Hayward Hamlet and Valdo's Rest, I do personally favor Valdo's Rest. I do currently think it's stronger in 3.14 because it both allows you to level up your Syndicate members faster, as well as allowing you to do the safe houses as well as Katarina faster. And the faster you can cycle through these at higher ranks, the more rewarding Syndicate typically is. But that's not to say you don't want to run it in Hayward. You just need to put that particular strategy together of what you're looking for, if that is your choice. All right, so the next master is Niko, which is, of course, Delve master. Now, I don't personally do Delve at all, and so I'm probably a little lacking in the knowledge when it comes to the combinations that make this master effective. However, we'll just talk through them anyway. And if you have better strategies or suggestions, of course, leave them in the comment section below. But anyway, there's two areas for the Niko. The first is Lex Proxima, and there's 6 nodes you can get here. The first is Rich Veins. Veins and chests have a 10% chance to double sulfite, and then they also contain 20% increased sulfite. So this is a node that gives you more sulfite when you run Niko. Then Sulfite Infusion, white, yellow, red tier maps grant additional sulfite on completion. So this is just more sulfite again. And then Packed with Energy is one that actually increases your character strength, like max res, damage, and movement speed every time you open a vein or a chest in the area. So it's actually kind of a buff for you to run maps in this area. And so really a lot of sulfite gain here for Lex Proxima. The next zone is New Vastir. You can combo it. There's 6 nodes here as well. The first is like all the other ones, increased Niko favor, as well as 10% chance to grant additional Niko mission on completion. Then Sulfite Sentinels gives you the chests and veins are guarded by sulfite hoarding monsters, which is just the pack of monsters that'll spawn that also drop more sulfite. And then Out of the Blue gives you a 20% chance to also get Azurite on top of sulfite. Azurite being the stuff, the blue ones that you mine out of Delve there. And so, to me, if you are farming straight sulfite, Lex Proxima seems to be the better option if you just want to get as much sulfite as fast as you can and Delve. But if you're looking for some auxiliary benefits of Azurite as well, then New Vastir is a potential option. Of course, you can also look at the other nodes in each of these Atlas regions, see what's better. All right, next is Alva. Again, there's 2 Atlas regions for that. There's 2 for everyone, in case it wasn't obvious. But anyway, Glennick Cairns is really the one that I favor a lot. I've done a video in 3.13 about running temples this way as well. But Glennick Cairns is incredibly powerful. Glennick Cairns nodes is primarily centered around improving the temple itself, okay? And so that's what these nodes primarily do. There are only 2 nodes you need to get, but they're incredibly strong. The first is resource reallocation. Oh, and oh, by the way, the wording on these by GGG is incredibly confusing, so I'll try to simplify it for you. The first is resource allocation. Killing non-resident architects in areas have 50% chance to add an additional upgrade tier to the surviving room's architect. Okay, ultra confusing. I don't know why it needs to be like that. But what this means is when you go for the upgrade option, you have a 50% chance to upgrade 2 levels instead of 1. That's what that means. So if you have a tier 1 room and you go to upgrade it, you can you have a 50% chance to upgrade it straight to level 3 instead of just to level 2. So incredibly powerful. With this node, it really helps you get a lot more tier 3 rooms in your temple. And then the next node is congested development. It functions similarly. What this one does says killing resident architects in areas adds their upgrade tier to the surviving room's architect. Okay, another very confusing statement. But what this one means is if you go to change rooms, if you pick the change room option, the room that you change to will retain the level of whatever the original room was. Okay, so if you had a level 2 jewelry room and you had an option to change it to a corruption chamber, for example, when you go to switch it, the corruption chamber, when it's switched, will retain the level of level 2. And so what that does is it removes the penalty of switching rooms. You're not going to lose if you have a level 2 room already, you're not going to lose those 2 levels, which again makes it really powerful to switch to the rooms that you want safely without losing the levels, and then with the other node being able to upgrade them to level 3 a lot easier. So long story short, what's going to end up when you run these Alva missions in Glen Cairns is you're going to end up with temples that typically will have a lot more tier 3 rooms and completed rooms than you otherwise would. So it's very, very strong, and you're also going to end up with a lot more rooms that you like versus rooms that you don't. All right, so on to Lex Ejoris. The Lex Ejoris Alva missions are more centered around the actual incursions themselves and not the temple. Okay, so all these nodes buff the incursions. So those little side missions that you're doing in the maps and the loot explosion that happens at the end, that's what this region is all about. And so there are 6 nodes here as well. The first is time and again. So time and again is just that master mission node that gives you increased favor as well as a 10% chance to get an additional Alva mission on completion. And then there's 2 other ones. So time dilation, incursion monsters in areas are at least magic, and time to gain from kills double in incursion areas. So basically what that means is when you do an incursion in that side area, you're going to have more time to complete it because every time you kill something, the timer goes up by double. And then all of the monsters inside that incursion are at least magic. What that means is it's going to improve the loot explosion at the end when you're done the incursion and all that loot explodes out of the ground. That is going to be improved because all the monsters you kill are at least magic or rare instead of white monsters. Now, the other one is Vol Oligarchs. And what Vol Oligarchs is, incursions in areas contain what's called a Vol Flesh Merchant. And a Vol Flesh Merchant is a monster that appears inside the incursion that you have to kill. And if you kill it, then the loot explosion at the end is going to drop additional currencies. Now, I have personally tested this node, not extensively, but I have tested it and I have read some other reviews about Vol Flesh Merchant. I personally don't think I would necessarily recommend it as a straight up farming strategy, especially when you're going to waste Alva missions on it. I didn't find it all that great when I ran it. Maybe I just got unlucky, but it was a little underwhelming, unfortunately. And so, time dilation is probably actually the better one if you're just looking for a better loot explosion. But Vol Oligarchs, you will get a currency explosion at the end as well. It's just not all that cracked up to be. So I guess, that's my feedback, and you can take that with a grain of salt, of course. And so, but anyway, I do personally solely focus on Glen Cairns when I run Alvas because I do personally find having a very strong temple to be much more rewarding than buffing the incursions. And so, but anyway, whichever strategy that you decide to focus on, you pick the appropriate region for. All right, and then finally Einhar, which is beast farming. I don't do a ton of this myself either, but there are two regions, of course. Lyra Arthane is the first one. So there's 6 nodes you can get here. The first is Einhar Increased Favor and additional Einhar mission on completion, just like all the other ones. And then the one that is worthy of talking about in Lyra Arthane, of course, is Natural Selection. Beasts in areas are more likely to be less common varieties, which basically just means you're going to get more rare beasts or increase the probability that you're going to get more rare beasts. So this is very good to run in Lyra Arthane along with Einhar. And then Mighty Hunter is that Einhar gets more damage and cooldown recovery rate and remains after you complete the Bestiary mission. Basically, the Einhar that fights alongside you is stronger and stays with you the whole map. So if you need the extra damage, I guess, or the extra help for completing these maps, you can certainly get that one. But otherwise, generally speaking, for myself anyway, usually the characters are strong enough to take on the maps here. So, that's not usually much of a help. But anyway, you can also grab a Turn's End here, which there's 2. Big game basically gives red beasts a 15% chance to appear in pairs, and yellow beasts have 15% chance to be replaced with red beasts. This number has been nerfed since 3.13 because it is pretty good if you think about it. This is actually a fairly good node to run. I quite like it myself. And then the other is a Great Migration. Areas have a 10% chance to contain additional pack of beasts instead of other monsters. So between additional packs of beasts as well as beasts appearing in pairs, or red beasts accompanying yellow beasts, you can really very quickly farm red beasts in this region here. All right, guys, that's it for this video. Like I say, this is just sort of the basic pairings when it comes to the Ascendancies as well as the Master Missions. And there's a ton of combinations you can do out there and different strategies. So, pick the one that sounds good to you. I did try to suggest the ones that I run personally, typically, especially when it comes to June and Alva. Those are the ones that I typically like to run the most, and Zana, of course, and Niko, and sort of Einhar being sort of the ones I am less familiar with. If there's anyone out there who do run those other ones more regularly to a lot of success, or if there's really any other strategies or any comments, really, make sure you leave some in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what else is out there and how people are taking advantage or maximizing their master missions as much as possible with different creative pairings. All right, so I'll leave it at that. The video is already quite long. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found the video helpful, and if you did, please like and subscribe. Also stream on Twitch Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Times are in the description below. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.